I don't think I understand very well. Probably because I'm starting from the seventh chapter, the last chapter. The psychology of dream activities. I don't know what dream activities are. Among the dreams which I have heard from others, there is one which is at this point, uh, which at this point is easily, especially worthy of our attention. It was told to me by a female patient who, in turn, had heard it in a lecture on dreams. Its original source is unknown to me. This dream is evidently made a deep impression upon the lady, as she went so far as to intimate it, and that is to repeat the elements of this dream in a dream of her own, in order to express by this transference her agreement with it in a certain point. The essential facts of this illustrative dream are as follows. For days and nights, a father had watched at the sickbed of his child. After the child died, he retired to rest in an adjoining room, leaving the door ajar. However, so as to enable him to look from his room into the other, where the corpse lay surrounded by burning candles. An old man who was left as a ward sat near the corpse, murmuring prayers. After sleeping a few hours, the father dreamed that the child stood near his bed, clasping his arms and calling out reproachfully, "Father, don't you see that I am burning?" The father woke and noticed a bright light coming from the adjoining room. Rushing in, he found the old man asleep, and, and the covers, uh, and one arm of the beloved body burned by candle flame. The father's dream was the child standing near the bed, clasping his arm, and saying reproach, reproachfully, "Father, don't you see I'm burning?" Father woke up and noticed the light coming from the adjoining room, rushing in, found the old man asleep and covered, and the arm of the beloved body burned by the fallen candle. Now, what do you do with the interpretation? And how do you interpret this? The meaning of this affecting dream. What's an affecting dream as opposed to a regular dream? A symbol. The meaning of this affecting dream, a symbol enough. And the explanation given by the lecturer, as my patient reported it, was correct. The bright light coming through the open door into the eyes of the sleeper produced the same impression on him as if he had been awake. And that is a good theory, but still, we really don't know why the dream happened. That's just a hypothesis, namely that a fire had been started near the corpse by a flaming falling candle. It is quite possible that on going to sleep he feared that the aged guardian was not equal to the task. We find nothing to change in this. It is quite possible that on going to sleep he feared that the aged guardian was not quite equal to the task, so he already felt that the old person would might fall asleep. So that was in the back of his mind. Well, that's possible, but that still is not, so it's not. It's just a possibility, but we still don't know why he dreamt what he dreamt, and I don't think that's going to change even if we read the entire book or not. We still have no idea why there is a dream. The dream happened the way it did. Freud comes up with all kinds of explanations, but that sounds like, oh, that could be true, but it's not really. We can find nothing to change in this interpretation. We can add only that the content of the dream must be overdetermined, and that the taking of the child consisted of phrases that it had uttered, and the talking of the child consisted of phrases. This is another explanation he's giving. Phrases that it had uttered while still living, which recalled to the father important events, perhaps the complaint, "I am burning," recalled a fever from which the child died, and the words quoted, "Father, don't you see," recalled an emotional occurrence unknown to us. That could be true, that could also equally and more possibly be not true. Because there's no necessity that dreams be mere repetitions. But after we have recognized the dream as a sense occurrence which can be correlated with our psychic existence, what does that mean? After we have recognized the dream as a sensual occurrence, what does that mean? A dream is a sensual occurrence which can be correlated with our psychic existence. What does that mean? Is he referring to the light, his hypothesis that that was just a hypothesis that the light falling on the eyes uh, caused the dream of the child burning? No, this, in a dream you might be in I don't know, Antarctica, um, and the light can it's just a material. The nature, the form of the things in the dream uses the material sensations that that the that falls on the sense receptors. So if a bright light falls on my face in the dream could use it, or dream couldn't use it, but there is no necessary connection between the two. The dream can use it in its own way for whatever purpose. But after we have recognized the dream as a senseful, not sensual, senseful current which can be correlated with our psychic existence, it may be surprising that our dream should have taken place under circumstances which necessitated such immediate awakening. What does that mean? It may be surprising that the dream should have taken place under circumstances which necessitated such immediate awakening. Why is that surprising? Dreams often happen just before you wake up. It may be surprising that a dream should have taken place under circumstances which necessitate such an immediate awakening. Right, so yeah, so he had to get up at that point, and the dream also made him get up at that point. Maybe that's what he's talking about. And if his eyes were closed and he was sleeping, how could he to get up. Well, he must have heard the sounds of the flame, felt the heat, or some kind of disturbance, smoke or whatever. It may be surprising that a dream should have taken place under circumstances which necessitated such immediate awakening. We also note that the dream does not lack the wish fulfillment. The child, so this is another uh, theory or hypothesis or whatever it is, or teaching, one of Freud's teaching. Circumstances which necessitated such immediate awakening. We also notice that the dream does not lack the wish fulfillment. The child acts as if living, and the child is certainly not dead in the dream. In the dream, the child is alive. It wants the father itself. It comes to the bed and clasps his arms, as it probably did on the occasion which gave origin to the first part of the speech in the dream. What is the first part? The part of the dream. I am burning. Recalled the fever from which a child died. So it must have clasped his arm when it was having a fever. The child, it comes to his bed and clasps his arms, as it probably did on the occasion which gave origin to the first part of the speech. First part of the speech. The child stood near his bed and clasping his arms, calling out approachfully, "Father, don't you see that I'm burning?" It comes to the bed and claps his arms, as it probably did on occasion which gave origin to the first part of the speech in the dream. So he's saying that when the child was sick, the child came to the bed. I would imagine if the child is sick, that the child would be the one in the bed and not the father or whatever. The child came beside the bed and held his arm, saying, clasped his arm, saying, "I am burning. Don't you see? I am burning. I'm extremely, uh, yeah, I'm sick." It was for the comes to the pen clasps his arms, as it probably did on occasion which gave origin to the first part of the speech in the dream. It was for the sake of this wish fulfillment that the father slept a moment longer. How do we know that the father slept a moment longer? Where is he getting this information? One moment longer than what? Did the father sleep a moment longer? It was for this reason, for the sake of wish fulfillment, that the father slept a moment longer. Longer than what? When the fire started burning? A great song called "When the Fire Starts to Burn, It Starts to Spread." I forgot the band. It's a great song though. The dream triumphed over the conscious reflection. How did the dream triumph over the conscious reflection? What conscious reflection? This is what happens when you start at the seventh chapter. The dream triumphed over the conscious reflection because it could show the child once more alive. Oh, right. In regards to wish fulfillment, it triumphed over the conscious reflection, that is the waking state, because it fulfill his wish, whereas the waking state couldn't. And the dream triumphed over the conscious reflection because it could show. Okay, supposing that he did stay a bit longer in bed, it is because his wish was being fulfilled. Is that what Freud is teaching? If the father had awakened first and then drawn the conclusion which led him into the adjoining room, he would have shortened the child's life by this one moment. If the father had awakened, so yeah, if the father awakened first and then drawn the conclusion which led him into the adjoining room. All right, so the father awoke first. And then saw the burning and went to the room. He would have shortened the child's life. This one moment. But he did shorten the life of the child by waking up. For the sake of this wish fulfillment, oh my goodness. Wish fulfillment that the father slept a moment longer. The dream triumphed over the conscious because it could show the child once more alive if the father awakened first and then drawn the conclusion which led him into the adjoining room. He would have shortened the child's life by this one moment. The peculiar feature of this dream, which engages our interest, is quite plain. And so far, we have mainly endeavored to ascertain wherein the sacred meaning of the dream consists, in what way this is to be discovered, and what means the dream work uses to conceal it. In other words, our greatest interest has hitherto centered on the problems of interpretation. We now encounter a dream, however, which can easily be explained, the sense of which is plainly presented, and we notice that in spite of the fact that the dream still preserves the essential features which plainly differentiate our dreaming from our conscious thinking, and thus clearly demands an explanation. Why? Why? We now encounter a dream, however, which can easily be explained, the sense of which is plainly presented, and we notice that in spite of this fact, the dream still preserves the essential features which plainly differentiate our dreaming from our conscious thinking, and thus clearly demands an explanation. After clearing up all the problems of interpretation, we can still feel how imperfect our dream of the psychology of the dream is. I did not understand this. The peculiar feature in this brief dream which engages our interest is quite plain. So far, we have mainly endeavored to ascertain wherein the secret meaning of the dream consists, in what way this is to be discovered, and what means the dream work uses to conceal it. In other words, our greatest interest has hitherto centered on the problems of interpretation. We now encounter a dream, however, which can easily be explained, the sense of which is plainly presented, and when we notice that in spite of this fact, the dream still preserves essential features which plainly differentiate our dreaming from our conscious thinking. And what are those essential features? The child being dead and the child not being undead in the dream. which plainly differentiates our dreaming from our conscious state. You mean the conscious waking state, and thus clearly demands an explanation. So the fact that the dream is different can be recognized as different from the conscious state demands an explanation. After clearing up all the problems of interpretation, we can still feel how imperfect our psychology of the dream is, how imperfect our knowledge of the dream is, presumably, psychology being a type of knowledge. I'm not very familiar with the Freudian way of talking. Before entering, however, into this new territory, let us stop and reflect whether we have not missed something important on our way hither. For it must be frankly admitted that we have been traversing the easy and comfortable path of our journey. Hitherto, all the paths we have followed have led, if I mistake none, to light, to explication, and to full understanding. But from the moment we wish to penetrate deeper into the psychic processes of the dream, all paths lead into darkness. It is quite impossible to explain the dream as a psychic process, for to explain means to trace the known, and as yet for to explain means to trace the known, and as yet we did not possess any psychological knowledge under which we can range what may be inferred from our psychological investigation of the dreams as their fundamental explanation. It is quite impossible to explain the dream as a psychic process, but to explain means to trace to the known any psychology, and yet we do not possess any psychological knowledge under which we can arrange what may be inferred from our psychological investigation of dreams and their fundamental explanation. On the contrary, we shall be compelled to build a series of new assumptions concerning the structure of the psychic apparatus and its active forces. On the contrary, we shall be compelled to build a series of new assumptions concerning the structure of the psychic apparatus and its active forces. And this we shall have to be careful, and in this, and this we shall be careful not to be. We shall have to be careful not to carry beyond the simplest logical concatenation, as its value may otherwise merge into uncertainty. What does that mean? That we should try to be logical, otherwise, it would be merely a hypothesis. And even if we should make no mistake in our conclusions and take cognizance of all the logical possibilities involved, we shall still be threatened with complete failure in our solution through the probable incompleteness of our elemental data. It will also be impossible to gain, or at least to establish, an explanation for the construction and workings of the psychic instrument, even through a most careful examination of the activity of a dream or any other single activity. It will also be impossible to gain, or at least to establish, an explanation for the construction and workings of the psychic instrument, even through the most careful investigation of the dream or any other single activity. So the psychic instrument probably means the mind. On the contrary, it will be necessary for this end to bring together whatever appears decisively as inconstant after a comparative study of a whole series of psychic activities. Thus, the psychological conceptions which we shall gain from an analysis of. On the contrary, it will be necessary for the end to bring together. Necessary for this to end to bring together whatever appears decisively as a constant after a comparative study of the whole series of psychic activities. Thus, the psychological conceptions which we shall gain from an analysis of the dream process will have to wait, as it were, at the junction point until they can be connected with the results of other investigations which may have advanced to the nucleus of the same problem from another starting point. Thus, the psychological conceptions which we shall gain from an analysis of the dream process will have to wait, as it were, at the junction point until they can be connected with the results of other investigations which may have advanced to the nucleus of the same problem from another starting point. All right, oh yeah, we actually finished. So I'm gonna quote this, and I want your opinion on it. What on earth is going on? What is he talking about? Did I miss anything? And so on. And what is all this?